Let's make sure we have everybody that we're supposed to have. I brought my whiskey voice with me today. Lots of people are on the down low at work, is that right? So we're going to have to keep it quiet. Too bad. I don't see JoJo. Somebody get JoJo in here. I got that day 2 hair. Yeah. It's my Mingy voice. It's my Felix voice. All right, let's make sure JoJo is here because I know she looks forward to this. And hell, half the reason that we do this is, well, at this time, is for our European crew. A lot of times the time zones don't work out. So, try to change it up this week. Spread the love. It's 10 p.m., Melody. Are you the one in Australia? Are you one of the ones in Australia? I feel like we had this conversation. Let's get a little light in here. Whew. Germany, that's right. I apologize. There we go. All right. How's everybody doing? Everybody ready for some boob club? First, let's everybody say hi to Chim Chim. Oh, yeah. Hi, everybody. I can tell you that. So let me show you where we are. Okay. I think by tomorrow we're going to be done with this. We'll do an hour today. We'll probably do an hour or whatever tomorrow. And I think we're going to be done with book 2. And then we might even have extra time tomorrow that we'll be able to do the webtoon. I think. Because I know if we start the webtoon, I feel like we should be able to do all of it in one go. The webtoon. It seems like. But I'm not positive. Okay? So I figure if we've got extra time tomorrow, we'll try to put it all together into one go. We'll see. I don't want to make any promises that I can't keep. All right, I guess we got everybody. We gonna get rolling. No luck on Joe. Okay. Some of you were not pleased with my exit yesterday. I was trying to be dramatic like Jin, and nobody got it. Everybody booed me and threw garbage at me. Thankfully, Thelma was paying attention, and she figured it out. Yeah, that's it. All right. Let's get down to business, shall we? Make sure I got my stuff ready on this side. Yep. Okay. Here we go. We are on page 182. 182. Jungkook, 24 July. Oh, sorry, hold on. There we go. How could I forget this? What am I, new? Sheesh. Every time. There we go. Let me know if that sound is good. I want you to feel warm. Thank you, Tasia. Good? Okay. Jungkook, 24 July, year 22. Jin took off. Tae followed him, and after exchanging glances, the others followed him too. Tae said something to Jin, but he didn't seem to be listening. I stood behind everyone and watched Jin getting into his car. The car backed away and turned. The light coming out of the container shined on Jin's car. The trace of an accident on the car bumper was visible for a short time and disappeared in the dark. I saw the scratch on the bumper, but strangely, I didn't feel anything. No shock, no boiling anger. It wasn't difficult to come to terms with it either. Everything became abundantly clear now. The top of Jin's car disappearing out of sight merged with the headlights that came at me that night. The feeling of being lifted up in the air, the moment when I couldn't even swallow my own saliva, the fear of having sudden convulsions, the unbearable coldness that scattered my consciousness, the shadow of death lurking about, and the trace of the accident I saw on the car bumper at that moment. I walked back into the container. I felt a twinge in the injured leg. The others were talking about stuff I knew nothing about, and they had no thought of coming back in. Jin, 24 July, year 22. It was a waste of time. I shouldn't have gone there. Instead of attending another redevelopment meeting, I went to JK's party because Junie wanted to talk about the map of the soul. I hoped that there would be a clue to get me out of this endless pain. But all I heard was Hobie begging me to save his orphanage. I stepped on the accelerator. Why do they always want something from me? Why can't they take care of things by themselves? Why do I always have to save them? I was sick and tired of it. Why do I save them again and again when they walk back into a mire of desperation after I bailed them out of there? Don't waste your time on a useless pursuit. I remembered what my dad had told me. Is there a way to end this without having saved anyone? Tay, 24 July, year 22. After the party, I came back to my place, a place of hell that I was used to. Empty bottles, cups, and plates rolling about on the floor, and the man crumpled in a helpless heap in the corner, cussing out of habit. My dad. Nothing to be surprised at. But I screamed when I saw my sister waddling around and sweeping up the broken bottles. Startled, she turned around. She resembled Mom. She was just like Mom, skinny or stooped back, but also the sense of helplessness. She took after everything in Mom, except in the selfishness of abandoning me. That was what she should have taken after. Tay, she said as she stood up. Hearing her feeble voice, I just couldn't stand it any longer. I'm sick of this, I yelled at her and ran out. I walked any which way. I wasn't headed anywhere. It was night, but the wind felt hot and wet. With every step, my head was thumping. I panted and my face flushed. But I couldn't stop. I walked as if I was running, and I ran as if I was walking, and I stopped and stamped my feet, screaming. But still, I couldn't calm down. I crossed the road and saw a familiar silhouette. It was Jungkook. I thought our eyes met, but he spun on his heels and soon became a blur. I thought it was just as well. I didn't want him to see me like this. I started walking again. I cut across the railway and the bridge. The first place I stopped was when I saw the road post for Munyon City. Welcome to Munyon City, a lovely place to live. Only then did I realize I was going to my mom. I'd gotten her address when I'd gone to see my uncle a couple of days ago. He stopped me and shoved a piece of paper in my hand. And when I opened the note, there was an address scribbled down in haste. Munyon City, Bokgu. Bogunjari Apartments, 103-306. And I knew right away it was Mom's address. Without a word, I shoved the note in my pocket. When I got out of the alley, I crumpled it up and threw it away. Ever since that day, I'd been thinking about apartment 103-306. I saw the address only once, but it became engraved in my head. The public housing apartment across the busy downtown area of Munyon City, Bokgu. I found myself searching for ways to get there. Cross the railway, cross the bridge, walk through downtown. I walked down the path in my head. When I get to the apartment and the door opens, what will the inside look like? Will Mom be happy or unhappy? My mind followed an endless chain of thoughts. I hoped Mom would be happy. Since she left us, she should at least be living a better life. That way I could hate her without having to pity her. I imagined her finally at peace in her life. A life that wasn't bound by something. A life in which she was responsible only for her own. A life in which she had no bruises on her arms or legs, and she spent her time after work tending her flowers on the veranda while sipping a cup of tea. The life of selfish stability in which she would sometimes remember me and my sister, only to forget us soon thereafter. It was past midnight, but the downtown area was brightly lit as in broad daylight. I left the people and cars whirring by and walked into the dark alley off the back street. It was the quickest route to my mom's apartment. The alley was a completely different world, dark and grim streets, flickering streetlights, and small and dingy bars with gaudy signs. With my eyes on the ground, I hastened my steps across the worn-out streets. I stopped and turned around because of a loud noise. A bar door banged open, and a man was chased out. A woman, possibly the bar owner, yelled at him and slammed the door shut. He probably couldn't pay her for the drinks that he had. He staggered in my direction, bumped me on my shoulder, reeled, and fell. Standing still, I looked down at him. He wasn't going to stand up anytime soon. He'd probably just finished Fireball Friday. And a Purrfest. He seemed to be falling asleep now. His overgrown and disheveled hair, his partly parted blackish red lips, and his sagging belly under a rumpled shirt. I turned away and fixed my eyes only on what was ahead. I started walking and walking faster. I ran. I wasn't going to turn around, but I couldn't help it. The man was still lying on the ground. I stopped with a curse escaping from my lips. "Mister, you shouldn't sleep here." Plastered, he was already asleep. I shook his shoulders hard. He reeked of the disgusting smell of booze. A very familiar smell. "Mister, stand up." He blinked a couple times, but closing his eyes, he said, "Who are you? You know me?" "No, I don't, but you shouldn't fall asleep here. You have anyone who can pick you up?" I swung his arm around my shoulder and helped him stand up. Leaning on me, he tried to stand up only to fall right back down on the ground. And when I tried to help him again, he pushed away my hand. He fell backward. I stepped closer. "Where do you live? I'll help you get back home. Can you please get up?" He looked up at me incredulously and giggled. I pulled his arm, but he pushed me away. And we repeated this a couple times. And he grew tired. When he fell down on the ground, he said, "Just leave me alone. Leave me alone so I can just drop dead." He lived in the neighborhood next to where my mom's apartment was. I carried him on my back. I was dog-tired. The drunk guy was heavy. Each step took everything out of me. I was accustomed to the weight of someone drunk. My sister and I used to roam the city looking for Dad. Bars would call us. We would find him in the dark corner of a bar by the roadside, cars whizzing by, or under a streetlight in a dingy back alley. As we carried Dad home, my sister and I didn't say a word to each other. Why are we taking Dad home? Wouldn't it be better to leave him there to rot? Why are we carrying him home when all he does is beat us like dogs? We tried hard not to ask these questions to each other. "I wasn't like this from the beginning," the man talked in his sleep. "Yeah, I get that," I told him. I put him down in the damp, semi-basement room and took a breath. My eyes landed on a broken table and dishes and empty booze bottles and instant noodle packets. I couldn't just leave. Not because I was physically drained out. I wished he would wake up and tell me stories even if they were boring stories. But he was asleep, and I slowly got up and headed out to the public housing apartments. I got to the apartment when the sun was about to rise. The darkest hour of the day. The place was quiet. My tired legs were walking toward apartment 103. The lights were on here and there in the run-down 5-story apartment building. Why were there people up so early, I wondered. I suddenly heard footsteps coming out of the building door. A woman with her hair tied in a clumsy bundle hurried out, but after seeing me, she cowered. I kept my distance and turned around. I saw a playground. Sitting on a swing, I could see down the outside corridor to apartment 103. I kicked the sand with my shoes and looked up at the 3rd floor. The rusty old swing clangered. Why am I hesitating when I'd run all the way here? My body ached, and so did my heart. I had no idea how long I'd been sitting there. I saw someone walking out to the hallway of the 3rd floor. I was too far away to get a good look at the face, but she was a skinny, middle-aged woman. With her eyes on the railing at the end of the hallway, she looked down at the playground. She lit her cigarette. The flame from her lighter flickered, but was gone soon. The smoke from the cigarette seeped into the bluish morning air. Without moving a muscle, I looked up at her. The sun must have been out, for things were becoming bright and hazy. The woman stayed as she'd been with her eyes fastened outside, and when she was done with her first cigarette, she took out a second. I wondered if she saw me. She couldn't see my face, but did she wonder what the person was doing in the playground this early in the morning? I gripped the swing chains so they would not make any sound. The tip of her cigarette glowed repeatedly, growing brighter and dimmer. The sun was coming up. Under the light of the new day, she smoked her last cigarette. She turned around and disappeared behind a door. I counted the doors from the very left. 304, 305, 306. That was my mom's place. I walked up and stood where my mom had been standing. The place was littered with cigarette butts. And like my mom, I hung my arms over the railing and looked down. I saw the swing where I'd sat. I stared at the empty swing moving back and forth. I heard the door of 306 being opened. I wiped away my tears and ran down the stairs. My hand smelled of rust from the swing. Once out of the apartment buildings, I saw the morning come alive. I walked to the bus stop with the distance growing between me and my mom's place. I had the sudden urge to turn around. But now was the time to go home. Junie, 25 July, year 22. Jin will call us, right? I got Tay's text in the morning. The container was littered with the traces of last night. For the first time in a long while, the place had been crowded with all 7 of us. The mood, however, was too dry to call it a party. I texted him back. Let's wait and see. I felt uneasy the whole time at work. I thought of Hobie last night and thought about texting him several times. It was solely my fault that they would clear out the orphanage earlier than scheduled. If I hadn't dumped those papers in the reporter's lounge, the redevelopment plan would have been at standstill as before. And Hobie knew this too. After work, I headed to 2-Star Burger. I saw Hobie from the window. He wasn't serving a customer or working at the cashier. He was just sitting on one of the chairs in the joint, and our eyes met. Hobie saw me, but turned his eyes away. I walked around the building, waiting for him to get off work. Hobie walked out on crutches. Yesterday, he had dressings on his ankle, but today, he had a cast on. Did it get worse? Hobie didn't answer. I slowed down to walk with Hobie. Maybe you should take a cab. And Hobie still did not say a word. It was the first time ever for me to feel this uneasy around Hobie. Are you off work now, or are you still on the clock? Is something wrong? Are you going to join the protest for the orphanage? Hobie stopped. Junie, I'm going to go by myself. Hobie looked emotionless. The Hobie I knew wasn't like this. I knew what the orphanage meant to him. I'm so sorry. It's all because of me. My words had no beginning or ending. But there must be something I can do. Hobie let out a sigh and said, You? Do what? And he couldn't continue. There was implied blame in that silence. How are you better off than us who live in the orphanage where you live in a container village soon to be demolished? I knew that he wasn't blaming me. He was raging against his helplessness. Junie, you should go. And hearing his tired voice, I stopped, and I watched until he became a blur. Hobie, 31 July, year 22. A couple of days ago, I rode a rocket. It was the day after I called in sick. And with my leg in a cast, I was nothing but a nuisance at work and in the workroom. I woke up in the morning, but there was no place I should be, and nowhere I could go to. I went out simply out of habit. Also, because it was hot and my rooftop room was getting stiflingly humid. From the bridge over the stream, I was watching rockets being launched when I had a sudden impulse to go down to the station. I bought a ticket for a rocket. What? I didn't have in mind to go see a big cosmopolitan, awesome city of historical relics or vast nature. I didn't pack my bag with a destination in mind. I just wanted to go somewhere that wasn't Songju. I didn't get on the rocket with high expectations. With a cheap ticket in my hand, I got on the train like a piece of baggage to be carried off without any intention or destination. I didn't want to think about anything. I wished I didn't have a problem and nothing required a solution. Are rockets trains? I'm literally picturing Hobie on a rocket like in the Jackass movie. A rocket train. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. That seems way safer. My ankle hadn't gotten any better. Because I had been going around places to plead for the orphanage, my ankle was now more swollen. I tried compression bandages on it, but they didn't help much. So, I was in a cast. There was not even a glimmer of hope to have the orphanage relocated. Well, it was obvious someone like me couldn't do a thing about it. I thought Jin was my last hope, but he was stone-hearted, to say the least. The train's destination was Hagok, the place for a new 2-star burger joint. I hadn't decided to work there yet. I chose the place among the names at the train station because I was familiar with it. The rocket ride would take 2 hours, and the city was about the same size as Songju. The rocket ran along the stream. After passing City Hall, it ran along the area designated for the new city development, and it made a sharp turn, and Songju disappeared from my sight. I didn't look back once. I kept my eyes ahead. My first impression of Hagok was that it resembled Songju, but livelier. I rushed off the platform, but after that, I rambled slowly behind people. Walking slowly was so not like me. But I walked so slowly that my speed interfered with the flow of the crowd. I acted as if I was determined to do things that I would usually not do. I moved with complete disregard for the people around me. I ate spicy food, which I usually didn't eat, and paid without saying the food was good. When no one was on the street, I spat on the ground. Following the online map, I got to the place for the new store. It was on the first floor of a building next to a high school. and next to it were a stationery store and 24-hour gimbap place. It was ridiculously similar to the surroundings of the Songju burger joint. While wondering where I would live if I were to work here, I bumped into someone. "I'm sorry." I stopped myself mid-sentence and I glared at him to say it was his fault. "Look where you're going." Hobie in Hagok would do whatever he felt like for 24 hours. He was a punk, an idiot, and a jerk. He might even be called a space butthole. I imagined this jerk for 5 seconds. "Aren't you Hobie?" I knew him. We were in the same dance class in middle school, and we had worked together at the Two-Star Burger in high school. I realized name Hagok was familiar because of him as well. That sentence made 0 sense. Moving right along. He had kept in contact even after he'd moved to Hagok. 1 or 2 months ago, he had texted, "We're pushing ourselves to death to get ready for a performance at the Cultural Center this summer." And that performance was tonight. "And we'll be on for a week. If you have time, come and see it tonight." The Cultural Center was right next to the building of the new burger joint. I waited 2 hours to see the show, which ended up being so-so. It had some good parts and parts which could be better. For each move, I wondered how I would have done it or changed it. After the show, my friend came over and quietly asked, "How did you like it?" I gave him 2 thumbs up as I got up from my seat. "But what brought you out here?" I pointed outside and said, "A Two-Star Burger joint will open up in the next building. I was thinking about working there." My friend was elated. "You know, 2 members of our team who were super good at choreo moved away. If you come, you could save us." In no time, his fellow dancers gathered, and he introduced me as someone who would join the team. Taken aback, I said it wasn't the case, but they all said hi. I was serious when I had said that nothing had been decided and that I hadn't made any decisions yet. My friend said he was teasing, but he still had me join them for dinner. And he asked again, "How did you like the performance?" I showed him the irrefutable 2 thumbs up and mentioned what each member was good at, 1 member at a time. And when I did, their eyes twinkled. They listened and asked questions. Some showed me the videos of their dance, and some asked more questions. They talked about their favorite dancer and even showed me some of their moves. So I missed the train. I stayed out there. I stayed at my friend's place and went to see their show every day. Hobie in Hagok was an unpaid team member who did everything from cleaning the floor to checking the schedule to ordering meals and so forth. I worried about what was happening in Songju from time to time. The redevelopment plan was still in the news. I worried about what was taking place with the orphanage. And one day I bumped into someone who worked for the Two-Star Burger main office. He asked what I was doing there, and I said I was just hanging out. He asked if I'd given thought to working at the store there. He added that someone who had started out as a part-timer had moved up to become a store manager and was now studying in America on a company scholarship. "This is definitely possible for you too. Think about it." And after he'd left, I thought about living here as Hobie of Hagok. Hobie who would become the manager of a company-operated store, who would go to America and who would speak English, study, and dance. I saw students flooding out of their school. Were they having makeup classes during vacation, I wondered? The dance team members came over, and after being chummy, they showed me a video and asked, "Can you show us how to do this move?" Junie showed up 4 days later. He was waiting for me in front of the building where the burger joint would open. My friends had texted or called me, but I hadn't checked their messages or taken their calls. I hadn't become a punk, an idiot, or a space butthole, but I had become Hobie of Hagok. Without even a glance at him, I asked, "How did you find me?" And Junie said he went to Two Star Burger. I remembered bumping into the guy from the main office. Well, maybe that was how the word got out. We sat at a foldable table in front of a convenience store with a soju bottle, nice, 2 paper cups, and dried squid on the table. Junie didn't say a word. I looked at him. He was always running places, from his work to the library, and since he took the time to come out here, he must have something to say, or have a lot to say to me. He probably wanted to ask me why I was there. I should be at home with my leg in a cast. The problem with the orphanage would work out, I guess. We should put our heads together. I should be thinking of my sick aunt. He knew I was having a hard time, but this wasn't going to solve anything. But nothing like this came out of Junie's mouth. Without a word, he emptied his cup time after time and let out a long sigh. "Hobie, do you remember how we were both late for school and ended up having to clean the classroom together?" I emptied my cup instead of answering. Jin cleaned the classroom with us, and you and I couldn't believe how he seemed to be cleaning something for the first time in his life. Really? I couldn't remember. Why bring that up now? I asked him to clarify. I don't know for sure, but Jin must have had his reasons, I'm sure. I mean, you know him. How he's been too nice. Junie went on with what was going on with Jin. I downed the cup and thought, things going on with him? Why do I have to worry about what's going on with him? He was born rich, drives an imported car. He went to study abroad and is studying in a university. He has nothing to worry about. Why do I have to understand him? And you should be on my side, Junie. You should be worried about me, is what I thought. Instead of saying that, I told him, I'm thinking about working at this store. I pointed to the place and downed the cup again. It tasted bitter. Junie looked at the store where they were redoing the interior. I've heard. So this will be operated by the company? They'll even send me abroad to study. That's great, Junie said, and he picked up his cup. I asked him, what did you tell your boss at the gas station? You know, we continued our conversation on and off, downed our cups, and picked back up our conversation, which we couldn't keep going. I woke up at my friend's place the next day. I got up only to feel nauseous. How much did I drink? And how did I get here? I must have blacked out. I turned and saw Junie on the floor. How much did you drink? My friend asked as he walked in the door. I went to buy instant noodles. You weren't hoping for bean sprout soup or anything, were you? Junie, wake up! When I shook his shoulder, Junie woke up startled. He looked around, not knowing where he was. He looked up at me blankly and asked, What time is it? Not even goodbye. That's so uncool. I limped to the station. Junie waved and ran. Junie, bye! I yelled, but wasn't sure whether he heard me. Junie disappeared into the crowd. I kept walking to the station. It was frustrating because I couldn't go faster. The crutches in my hands got in the way. I finally saw Hagok Station in the distance. I remembered the conversation I had with Junie last night. Tell me, Hobie, why does this booze taste so sweet? They say booze tastes sweet when life is bitter. We need bitter-tasting booze. Hobie, you made a good decision. Don't come back to Songju. Go to America. Go to Europe. Go to the moon. I told him, don't worry. I'm never coming back. Junie picked up his cup. You promised. I did. And we touched our cups, saying things that Hobie of Songju would have never said. I only got to the station right before the train departed, and a text came. Hobie, keep your word. The train started moving slowly. Soon it picked up speed and became a rocket. The rocket that launched from that station would arrive in Songju Station in 2 hours, and Junie would barely make it in time for his shift. I smiled, thinking of Junie with his messed up hair, holding the gas pump and smelling of booze. Great combination. Speak for yourself, I texted him back. I followed the rocket's path. It grew smaller and disappeared out of sight. I became teary for no reason. I turned and wiped them away. Oh my. Laughing and crying at the same time. This is so Hobie of Songju. We can laugh when we're together. Jin, 2 August, year 22. When I came back from Jungkook's welcome home party, there was a pile of papers on my desk. A note on them said, "A draft of your father's memoir. You're in it too, so some feedback would be appreciated." And that note was from Uncle Junho. My dad's memoir. In the previous loops, this was about the time I got the first draft of it. It would be published mid-September, and I would even attend the celebration party for the publication without having read it. For the first time, I was asked to read it in this loop. It might have been a butterfly effect from having gone to Jungkook's party instead of the meeting. I pushed the draft aside. I was not in the mood to read it. It might anger Dad, but once the loop was in motion again, it was all meaningless. Ever since I realized how meaningless it all was, I had become unafraid of Dad, and my relationship with him was also no longer important. I had to focus only on my problems. I turned the pages of the memoir by sheer accident. The wind from the window blew away the papers, and while I was picking them all up from the floor, my eyes landed on something interesting. It was a part where my dad was near the container village next to Songju Station and thinking of the future with me and holding my hand. It said he wondered if there would be a day when his boy would play soccer with a boy from the container village. Interesting wasn't the right word for it. Nothing in that memoir was interesting, but I wondered whether that really had happened. Was my dad that kind of person? I kept reading, but there was an abrupt change in the story. The part was about me in high school, and he compared it to his days in school, but there were about 10 pages missing. The fact that the pages were missing wasn't important. 10 pages from a memoir didn't make a dent in the story, and I had no interest in my dad's high school years. I wasn't interested in which 10 pages were missing or what they were about. I flipped to the table of contents, and there I saw the map of the soul. I gasped. I'd never imagined that I would see it in my dad's memoir. It was like getting punched while being completely defenseless. Junie telling me I should ask my dad passed through my mind. I knew right away where the missing 10 pages were. They were in the den. The inner room inside the den. After making sure I was home alone, I crept into the den. When I walked into the door, I saw a painting over the desk. The vast sea, raging waves, and a precarious wooden raft. People without food or drink. People without compass or hope. Out of hatred, fear, and desire, they killed and sucked the blood of each other as they slowly died. When I was young, I was so afraid of that painting that I stayed away from this place. I thought about why it had this terrible painting here. And as time passed, the painting became a part of this den and no longer an object of fear or wonder. But I had something else to fear. There was an inner room in the den. There was nothing special about the room. It had no lock, and it was just an extension of the den. The only noticeable thing about the room were the books. There were many books and papers he'd collected since high school. It was called the Inner Room. Not because someone named it that, but because it was the most fitting description of the place. Clever. Dad spent time there organizing his thoughts or coming up with new plans, and except for him, no one went in there. The exception was his secretary, who went in to deliver papers. I'd gone in only once, and even though I was very little then, I knew that place wasn't just a den with books. On the surface, the place looked ordinary, almost human, cluttered with boxes, papers, and books placed or piled up without any order. But there was no usual warmth from the printed papers and no emotions from the paintings or pictures. Just standing there and looking up at the bookshelves, I felt an overbearing pressure that nearly shattered me to pieces. I didn't recall having been scolded for going into the room, but maybe I had been. Since that day, I had never set foot in the place. I stood close to the door, but after glancing up at the books, I turned away, never having the guts to open the door. I did go into the room, however, in my dream. When I got reprimanded by my dad, I dreamt of being trapped in that room. Over time, my memories of the room faded, and they were replaced by my dad's face. And one day, I finally realized it. What the room was exuding was the very essence of him. No longer being afraid of him, however, I walked in without a care. The room looked different from the way I remembered it. The desks and papers were far from looking overbearing, nor did the room look like my dad. The missing pages were in an envelope in the middle of the bookshelf. The pages were disappointing. The chapter was titled, The Map of the Soul. But there was nothing in it about what the title meant. All the chapter had was a couple of episodes from my dad's high school days. But I saw a passage. When I thought about my high school days, I realized the map I'd been looking for wasn't a real map with roads or dead ends, directions, and scales. It was just another name for the life I have lived, the countless hours I have lived since then, and the choices that I've made. It'd be the trajectory of all my failures, successes, mistakes, and blunders. But I failed to find the map. In retrospect, I realized that I landed on the right path because of my failures. My dad was looking for the map? Given the chapter title, it was the map of the soul he was looking for. And he said that it'd be the trajectory of his failures, successes, mistakes, and blunders. Then what would be my trajectory? What contained the memories of the days I have lived? Was that what I should be looking for? I remembered then what Tay had told me. You've lost your memories. I ran back to my room. I pulled out a box from under the desk and found a couple of photo books and envelopes with Polaroid pictures. I turned the first envelope upside down and picked up the pictures. A picture I took at a beach in the United States when I was young. The Polaroid pictures of my childhood, and one where I looked awkward at a restaurant somewhere with Mom and Dad. The pictures with my friends were in the third envelope. After thumbing through the pictures with me in my school uniform, I picked up one picture. The one in which Hobie and Jimin were dancing in the classroom turned storage room. Something was reflected on the window, and when I looked closer, it was my face, and I was beaming. Had I ever smiled so big? Not to mention smiling at someone? I picked up one picture after another. In the classroom, at the beach, or on the streets, I was goofing around, shoving or tugging on someone. In one picture, Hobie and Jimin had whipped cream smeared on their faces. And in another one, Yoongi was playing piano with JK sitting next to him. Junie was posing by the window, Tay chuckling right in front of the camera, and all of it was recorded in the picture. Did all this really happen? When I tried to remember, the headache came back. I didn't know, but I closed my eyes tight, and the memories I was about to bring back instantly dissipated. I realized this had repeated over and over again, and when I tried to remember, the headache came back. I stood up and looked down at the pile of pictures. I gritted my teeth and focused. Fighting against the pain, I tried to remember. Only when I am able to overcome this pain will I be able to find the trajectory of my life and arrive at the map of the soul. Had it really happened, nothing of it remained with me. Wide-eyed, I looked at the pictures, and I thought about my high school days, the old classroom turned storage room, the dust, the smell of mildew. It felt wet at the time. Yoongi played the piano, and somebody laughed. With my eyes closed, I held my fists tight. The pain was beyond bearable. I felt as if all the blood veins in my head would explode. The blood would trickle down, making everything crimson in my eyes, and the blood and the burning sensation would seep into every corner of my head. I buckled. If I could get rid of this pain, I wouldn't care an iota about the memories, or care about finding this map of the soul. In fetal position on the floor, I waited for the pain to subside, and it did very, very slowly. The tensed-up muscles loosened and sagged. I was covered in sweat. There was no energy left in me to try anything. I wanted to give up right there and right then. My phone rang a while after that. Without even looking at the screen, I touched it and it started to play music. Piano music. Feeling vacant, I was listening to the music when my eyes landed on a picture. Without getting up, I brought the picture closer to my eyes. In it, Yoongi was playing the piano. Hobie and JK were goofing around. Junie was saying something and Tae held a V with his hand over Yoongi's head. Jimin gestured for me to come into the frame. Only then did I remember. The song was what Yoongi used to play in that classroom. How was it that I hadn't forgotten that? It seemed odd. Are you going to forget me soon? Jimin too? And Jungkook? And Junie? Do you know who you are? I remembered Tae pleading with me. Yoongi, 2 August, year 22. After sending Jin a music file, I laid down again. While thumbing through the music scores I'd brought from the classroom, I saw a sentence written in the margin. We can laugh when we're together. It didn't look like my handwriting. I remembered one foggy day. I happened to be walking across the school playground with Jin. We both felt awkward. With my hands in my pockets and my eyes fixed on the ground, I intentionally walked slower than usual. I hoped that he would go ahead without me, but he didn't. Every time I tried talking to him, it made it more awkward between us. He chuckled out of embarrassment. I ended up asking him, when was the last time you really laughed from your heart? He didn't answer, and I didn't ask him again. I had no intention of putting him on the spot. The question had just popped out of my mouth. We can laugh when we're together. This might be the answer to that question. But I wasn't sure if Jin had written this. A certainty I didn't need to have. The melody on the score was pretty lame. I had written it only 2 years ago, but my music back then was unripe and destructive. The notes didn't connect smoothly, nor did they sound beautiful. When I thought about my high school days, I only remembered going around drunk, but I hadn't spent every day like that. I'd spent the whole night rewriting the score and finished it this morning. I changed the connecting parts between the melodies with a more polished bass, but I left the destructiveness as it was, the same with a sense of aggression. That was how we'd been, aggressive. I named the piece, We Can Laugh When We're Together. Tae, 2 August, year 22. I woke up, startled. I felt chilled with my heart pounding. What had got me all riled up? I looked around, but nothing had changed in Macreon Apartments 401, my dirty old shack. I thought I'd take it easy for a bit, but ended up dozing off. What time was it? How long had I been lying on the sunlight coming in through the window? When I stood up, my back was drenched with sweat. I gulped down a cup of water. I felt better as the lukewarm water went down through my system. I looked up at my phone. I had a new text from Jin. It came with a couple of pictures from our high school days. Yoongi sitting by the piano with Jungkook. Hobie and Jimin with whipped cream on their faces. Junie reading a book by the window. And me laughing my head off in front of the camera. And below the pictures it said, "Did this really happen?" I expanded the pictures. Had they really happened? I remembered them as clear as day. None of us would have forgotten them. Not because those moments in the pictures were special. Back in school, we had too many of those days even to count. Every day was like the day in the pictures. It wasn't a matter of remembering them or not. I thought about what Jin meant. After JK's messed up party was over, I had left a text in our chat room. "Jin, if you ever need us, just let us know." Junie asked me later, "Do you think he will?" I said, "I want to believe in him, because believing something which is hard to believe is really believing." The text Jin had sent, asking whether the pictures had really happened, was his answer to my text. He had begun to trust me. He took the first step to admitting that he was losing his memories and he needed help. And I knew exactly what to do. I'd said I wanted to help him, but I had no plans and didn't know what I could do. But Jin gave me that answer. I had to bring back the spaces, the times, and emotions in the pictures. We had to go to Junie's container, the railway by Songju Station, the shore, and the school. I clicked on our chat room. It was time for us to meet. Jimin, 2 August, year 22. Where is everyone? I got the text from Tae in our chat room while I was in class. I put down my pen and held the phone with both hands. The text was read by everyone in no time. Maybe we had all been waiting for this moment. Soon, Jin will reach out to us. When he does, I'll text everyone for all of us to meet. And when Tae had sent us this text, I half believed and I half doubted. I wondered if that day would ever come. But I nodded, hoping it would. We all did. It wasn't really a promise. It was what we'd hoped for. I was sure it was the same for Tae. I packed my backpack and left. Some looked at me, puzzled. As I was leaving, my phone kept pinging with incoming text messages. Tae said he was going to meet up with Jin at the closed-down swimming pool, and he would swing by Junie's container and Songju Station and head out to school. He wanted to go to the beach, but that would take too long. Junie said he'd join us at the container. Hobie said he'd be late and meet us at Songju Station. The text indicated that one person hadn't read it yet. I wrote in haste, "I will go get Yoongi." I turned at the corner. If someone hadn't read the text yet, it had to be Yoongi. I felt a breeze blowing from somewhere. I quickened my steps. I felt I should hurry. I ran up the stairs. "Yoongi!" I knocked, hearing the music coming from his room. The door was open. Sitting on the sofa, Yoongi stared at me, wondering why I was there when I should be in Hagwon. Hobie, 2 August, year 22. I realized it as soon as I saw Tae's text. It was time to go back. I'd left Songju in a fit of anger a couple days ago. There were many reasons for my anger. My aunt being sick, the redevelopment plan in the orphanage, and my injured ankle. However, I had no clear target for my rage. To be truthful, I was mad at my helplessness, but I had vented all my anger on Jin. While helping out my friend and his dance team, I mulled over this and that. There's something wrong with Jin, Tay had said, but I didn't really pay attention. Jin was rich, and he was the son of an assemblyman, a college student, and drove his own car. My problems were much more serious and important compared to this. I got mad at him for not helping me, but had I ever helped him? When I told my friend that I had to go back to Songju fast, he seemed at a loss. When I said I was sorry, he shrugged and said, "You seem like you were ready to go back any day." I said that wasn't true and added, "You know how hard I've worked here even with my bad leg? How can you say that?" He smiled and said, "You know that's not what I mean. You should go back. We'll take care of things here." I clicked on the chat room and said it'd be great if we could meet at Songju Station. I could just make it to the train in time, and I started running toward Hagok Station. And there we will leave off today on page 219. 219. And that is all we have left, and we will finish up tomorrow. Everybody say goodnight to Cham Cham. Handsome fella. Sweet little Cham Cham. Still can't believe it. Well, I hope you're enjoying. I think we've got one more night of reading, and that will close out BU Notes 1 and 2, the most beautiful moment in life. And at which point we will move into the Save Me webtoon. Much love to all of you. I will see you, hopefully, tomorrow. I'm Roscoe. I'm your BU buddy. Look out for each other. We still have so much reading ahead of us. Boop. Club.